I've been reviewing Big Finish for several years now, but for some reason I just always seem to bypass the short trips installments. Not this time, baby! Hello ladies and gentlemen, my name is Mr. TARDIS and welcome to another Big Finish review. This time we're going to be diving into the Short Trips range. Now every year Big Finish releases a Short Trips compilation box set where experienced and brand new writers come together to tell a variety of different stories across the Doctor Who universe. And traditionally speaking, these are not full cast audio dramas, but they're short 30 to 40 minute narrated stories. And they can revolve around doctors or companions or villains. And in the case of Short Trips Volume 14, Impeccable and Other Stories, the cover story here is an Eric Roberts master story written by Georgia Cook. And after that we have 5 other stories. We have Hard Feelings by Philip Lawrence, which is a 5th Doctor and Nyssa story with the Cybermen, Cut Out by Dominic Pulliam, Bring Me the Head of Dorian Maldovar by Nick Slawick, The Tip of the Mind by Peter Angelhides, and Is Anybody There by Benjamin Mackenzie. So these are 6 stories across the box set. We're going to speed run these. Like I mentioned up top, Impeccable by Georgia Cook is an Eric Roberts master story, and it's also narrated by Eric Roberts. However, the Master is not the main character of the story, even though he certainly has the body of the Eric Roberts Master. This is Mark. Mark has a beautiful home and a beautiful family in the suburbs on an asteroid called Impeccable. He basically lives on an Earth colony and he goes to work every day, but he has no idea what his job actually is. He has no idea what's going on with his neighbours. It's a little bit Stepford Wives meets a Westworld, and everything on the asteroid starts going wrong as Mark starts hearing voices at the back of his head.
The air through the open back door smells of freshly mown grass. Across the street, little Carrie Greenson is playing on the swing set his father built in their apple tree last fall. Children ride their bikes down the sidewalk, whooping and laughing. I breathe in the air with a smile. It's shaping up to be another beautiful day in the town of Impeccable. What an idiot. This time the thought catches me so off guard that I drop my coffee mug. I look around, bewildered, in case someone has arrived in the back door without my noticing. I shake my head. Nothing. It's nothing. The headache remains at the back of my skull, insistent despite the painkillers. Maybe an early walk to the office will do me good.
First things first, I really enjoyed the Eric Roberts narration. There is a very clear distinction between Mark and the Master, and I thought that was really cool to hear. I also think Georgia Cook has written an incredibly efficient story. It's only about half an hour long, but she essentially has to try and world build a whole new colony town. And while the story is speed running it, that makes complete sense, because with a character like the Master, all of the world building, all of the backstory of Impeccable and what's happening on the asteroid, the Master doesn't care. What we have here is a Master story where the Master essentially is trying to piggyback on another oppressive regime, and he wants to take down the organization that is asserting dominion on the people here because he wants to be the dominator. I thought it was a really cool Master slice of life story because it almost like has horrifying implications of the Master being akin to a destructive mayfly. He has a very limited lifespan as he's body hopping and he's very unstable. So he's going from world to world, planet to planet, colony to colony or whatever, and he's just wreaking as much havoc as possible before he dies again, and that's kind of scary and horrifying. Georgia Cook is a very good horror writer, but the horror here is way more in the subtext, which I think makes this a really affecting story. Plus it's just lovely to hear more of Eric Roberts' dulcet tones. The guy's got a really great voice. The next story is Hard Feelings by Philip Lawrence. The story essentially opens in medias res with Nyssa and the Doctor on the world of Tal'Jira. However, the story picks up where Nyssa has been separated from the Doctor. She went on a flying tour and then all of a sudden the Cybermen invaded this world. The ship that she's in crashes and Nyssa is being stalked by a Cyberman who has a very cruel and sadistic streak to it, which is very uncharacteristic of the Cybermen. With the Cyberman here voiced by Nicholas Briggs channeling a 1980s David Banks Cyberman, the Cyberman is seemingly stalking her and playing games of I Spy and chanting "Ready or Not, Here I Come," and it's surprisingly chilling.
It's closer than I expected. A towering metal man, the dull light bouncing from the unmistakable handles on its head. Though one of them is snapped through. The Cyberman seems uncertain somehow, gazing sightlessly at its distorted reflection in a polished wall panel, its metallic voice gurgles and rasps. Is it injured? Dazed by the crash? It doesn't seem to notice me, so I take the chance to tiptoe across the gap in the shelves. Something has hit the power plant. The floor rumbles and shakes. I drop to my knees with a yelp. Cyberman turns to face me. It reaches for something. Its gun? I don't wait to find out.
Sarah Sutton, who plays Nyssa, she narrates this one, and as silly as it sounds, the visual reference that I had when listening to Hard Feelings was The Last of Us. There's a chapter early on in The Last of Us game when Joel and some companions are making their way through a dilapidated building, and that's kind of what I imagined the environment that Nyssa was in as she's trying to avoid the Cyberman that's stalking her. It kind of makes me think that that would be a really cool Doctor Who horror game. Hold on a second, I might need to write that one down. But not only is Hard Feelings a really creepy horror piece where Nyssa is being stalked by this damaged Cyberman, but it had some really terrific character work and conflict in it, as Nyssa gets really angry at the Doctor for letting her get into this situation because the Doctor presumably knew what was going to happen to this planet before they arrived, and just let Nyssa do her thing anyway. I really like how this episode pushed Nyssa and took her to the edge of violent, symbolic revenge. There's a really great moment where the Cyberman is trapped and Nyssa basically starts engaging in like a form of torture for it, because it's like retribution for everything she's been through and the death of Adric and all of this other pent-up anxiety and anger that she has through her travels of time and space, including, but not limited to, the loss of Traken and her people and her father. And the story ends with a really lovely coda where Nyssa starts to see the universe more from the Doctor's perspective and feels a bit of pity for him, and I thought it was a really, really lovely ending. The writer of this story is Philip Lawrence, and he hasn't written for Big Finish for about 10 years, and I think with this he's really come back with a bang. The next story, Cut Out by Dominic Polian, is read by Duncan Wisby, and this is kind of a multi-Doctor adventure. It's a really interesting story. So the writer of the story, Dominic, is a character in the story. He's an MI6 officer who is being interviewed or debriefed from some recent mission. And the half-hour story has Dominic retelling the events that have led up to this interview, which has him and MI6 investigating a dictator mad scientist character, and he's trying to gather intelligence and evidence to bring this guy down, and the evidence that he finds is witness testimony from multiple Doctors, the 4th, 5th, 6th and 7th Doctor, all voiced and imitated by Duncan Wisby. But because Dominic doesn't know about the Doctor and Time Lords and that, he assumes that these people are different individuals who are giving him testimony individually.
When he saw me weaving through the sticky tables towards him, he gave me a very teethy smile, a twinkly wave. His eyes seemed to bulge out of their sockets.
Ah,
He said as I sat down.
you're Dominic. Not your real name, of course.
I smiled warmly back at him. Thank you for meeting me, David, I said. How much time do you have?
Would you like a jelly baby?
He asked, producing a small paper bag. I politely took one and queried him about what he'd told the newspapers.
It's such a cool idea for a story. I just love the conceit that you have this MI6 agent who needs multiple witnesses and testimonies before MI6 can take action, so the Doctor knowingly just uses multiple incarnations pretending to be multiple people just so that they can get the clearance to act. And you're seeing all of this from Dominic's perspective. Of course, if you're listening to this audio drama, you already are several steps ahead of Dominic, but the story itself, it plays it straight. Like, Dominic just assumes that these 4 eccentric, weirdly dressed people are different people, whereas the audience know that this is the Doctor. And the most interesting bit of meta storytelling here is that Dominic, the writer, actually did work for MI6, and Dominic is not his real name. He now works in corporate security and has kept his identity anonymous. Such a cool idea. I couldn't really tell you much about the actual plot of the story, like on a recollection, but I did really enjoy listening to it. And with it being written by a former MI6 agent, I'm sure there's some terminology and some accuracy to the protocol and what it's like to be in the organisation. It's just a really cool idea. Next up, we have Bring Me the Head of Dorian Maldovar by Nick Slawix. This is a 12th Doctor story read by Peter Forbes, and as you can see, the title borrows from Bring Me the Head of Alfredo Garcia, which is a 1970s film from Sam Peckinpah. Dorian Dorian, played in the TV series by the late Simon Fisher Becker, has got himself in a bit of trouble. He scammed a ruthless gangster with a fake painting called Whispers of the Ether, but the gangster has now figured out that it's a fake and has put a bounty on him. So Dorian, who is now still just ahead, he presses the big red metaphorical button in his box, which summons the Doctor to help. However, he's not expecting the 12th incarnation to turn up, and this is canonically the first time that these two have met. And Dorian essentially guilt trips the 12th Doctor into saving his life.
Dorian peered out from his transept box, faintly unsettled by the stranger perched near his plinth. This new Doctor was so different compared to Demon's Run. Greyer, sterner, harder at the edges. But there was something familiar in those eyes that now better matched their face, that had lived to an age they never expected to see. "You called me in from halfway across the universe about a painting," he growled. It wasn't a question. Dorian sighed. "A matter of life and death. I thought you'd be rather more sympathetic, considering. How was Trenzalore, anyway?" "Dark, overcrowded. Food wasn't great. But on the plus side, I didn't die. Overall, 2 stars.
Peter Forbes does a really good job at narrating the story, but the behind-the-scenes interviews do confirm that they were intending to have Simon Fisher Becker narrate this audio story, but unfortunately he passed away before he could record it. But Peter does a really good job. He does a really good Dorian impression, so maybe they're opening the door for Peter to fill the role if they want to do more Dorian stories in Big Finish audios. And Peter also does a really good 12th Doctor, with Nick Slawicz's writing really capturing the 12th Doctor's very unique voice and cadence. The 12th Doctor is a Doctor who is incredibly difficult to write for. He has a very distinct cadence and lexicon that basically is unlike any other Doctor. So just writing a short trips that feels authentic to the character is a feat in and of itself, but the fact that it's an interesting, fun, timey-wimey heist story, yeah, I enjoyed this one. I think there is a bit of an issue with the pacing. About 70% of the story is just a massive conversation between the Doctor, Dorian, and the gangster who's put the bounty on him, and I think it goes on way too long. The momentum is just absolutely killed in that sequence. But apart from that, I had a good time, and it ends on a really, really fun note. I loved the closing moments of the story. Next up, the penultimate one, The Tip of the Mind by Peter Angelidis, performed by Lisa Bowerman. This is a Zoe Herriot story. This takes place in the far future in Zoe's workplace after she's been dropped off by the Doctor or had her memories wiped by the Doctor at the end of the War Games in the late 1960s, and the story is from the perspective of Dr. Sandra Ertemann, and it's a very much written from her first-person perspective, including her opinions on everything and her opinions on the characters that she's interacting with, and she is the only person who does not know that she's the absolute worst, and Sandra is getting very annoyed and frustrated at just how talented and brilliant Zoe is, and also a new visitor to the facility, a Doctor with a velvet jacket and also curly white hair.
But when I look across, there's Zoe with her glass of water and a limp salad. She gave me that little half-smile of hers that she does when she's grateful, and I could tell immediately that I'd spared her a tedious half-hour with Acamore. "Hello, Dr. Ertemann," said Zoe. She likes to use my formal title. We're on first-name terms on the station mostly, but none of my team call me Sandra. It's not a lack of affection. It's just their little way of showing respect for my authority. Zoe's picking silently at her Lola Rosso, while I try to keep the conversation alive.
I liked this one a lot. The behind-the-scenes interviews with Peter Angelidis was really interesting. This was based off of the Alan Bennett Talking Head stories, and it's also a really interesting story in regards to its place in the Doctor Who broader storyline, where we have the third Doctor who has been grounded on Earth by the Time Lords, but he's managed to try and find where Zoe is because he wants to try and access her eidetic memory, to try and get the dematerialization codes. Lisa Bowerman does a great job, and this is just a really successful story when it comes to getting you in the headspace of the main character. It's a really affectionate story. I really just loved hearing how much the third Doctor likes and respects Zoe, and that he just wishes that Zoe was still in his life. There's also an oddly melancholic piano version of the Doctor Who theme, which plays between scenes. I thought it was a really nice touch. And the last story in this Short Trips volume is Anybody There by Benjamin Mackenzie, and this is a 9th Doctor story narrated by Bronte Barbe. And you may remember Bronte Barbe, she played one of the Doctor Who fans in Lux. So the story follows Kina, who is currently trying to survive quarantine on a spaceship. However, she's been stalked from the shadows by a mysterious voice which sounds a lot like her abusive father. This entity is able to have Kina experience hallucinations, so when the Ninth Doctor arrives to help her, she has a lot of doubt as to whether or not he's even real and is there to help her, or it could be another one of these creatures' tricks.
What if he was a hallucination? What if it all was? Hello? Hello? The Doctor snapped his fingers in her face. Anybody there? She pulled back startled, but nodded her assurances that she was fine. I'm sorry, the Doctor said. He's dead. She stared blankly. He was clearly mad. If there was a body, she would be able to see it. Tell me his name, Kina said incredulously. The crew all had dog tags. That was policy. Clothes look academic, the Doctor said. There's the shield of a university. An obvious guess for a research station. She swallowed uncertainly. What's his name? She persisted. The Doctor studied her face with a shrewd expression. You can't see him, can you? He wasn't judging her, but it was the parental, patronising look all doctors were well versed in.
Is Anybody There was a good story. I felt like it was the most traditional and standard story of the whole set. It's essentially the final act on a Doctor Who Base Under Siege story, with Kina doing a really good job as the final girl, and I did like the directions the story went in, where the Doctor is really the one who needs saving here. I think Bronte did a great job narrating the story. It's great to have that northern accent in here, and I think it succeeds in being a pretty freaky and creepy story, especially in the first act when we really have no idea what's going on. And honestly, that's all I've got to say. One reason I tend not to cover these short trip stories is because there's a lot here, and there's only so much room in my head to do videos talking about these stories one by one. I think if I had a favourite, I think it's Hard Feelings. It's so well performed, at times it's viscerally scary, but also just sheer points for novelty and inventiveness with Cutout. I thought, you know, there's some really strong stories on this box set. But yeah, that was my review of Doctor Who Short Trips Volume 14, Impeccable and Other Stories. Let me know if you've got a favourite out of these 6, if you check out any of the short trips from the Big Finish audios. Leave a comment down below, hit the like button, subscribe, all that good stuff, and folks, I'll see you all next time.